This isn't a story I ever thought I'd tell, but it happened to me, and it's important to understand how the people you trust the most can become your most dedicated enemies. It's a hard truth, but one I had to learn. The polished silver of the gravy ladle felt impossibly heavy in my aunt's hand, catching the light from the dining room chandelier at my parents' house in Queen Anne. The entire family was gathered for my father's 60th birthday, a forced reunion that felt more like a parole hearing than a celebration. My cousin Kevin, sitting directly across from me, offered a smug, pitying smile as his mother, my Aunt Carol, paused with the ladle hovering over the mashed potatoes. "Chloe, dear," she began, her voice dripping with counterfeit sympathy. "It's just such a tragedy about you and Mark. Kevin told us everything. About your secret credit cards. We had no idea you were so irresponsible with money. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows." The clatter of the silver ladle against the porcelain bowl was like a gunshot in the suddenly silent room. Every eye was on me. My face burned with a heat that had nothing to do with the warmth of the dining room. It was the hot, acidic shame of being publicly dissected by a lie. A lie I knew, with sickening certainty, had been crafted and delivered by the handsome, smiling monster sitting across the table. My divorce from Mark had been quiet, mutual, and heartbreaking. It had nothing to do with money, but in that single, perfectly timed moment, my cousin Kevin had rewritten my history and handed it to my family as fact. He had turned my private pain into public spectacle, and the look in his eyes told me he was enjoying every second of it. The divorce itself was a quiet death. There was no shouting, no slammed doors, no dramatic affair. Mark and I had simply eroded. We were two people who had built a life together, and then, over the course of 8 years, realized we were living in separate wings of the same house. He was a software engineer at Amazon, consumed by the logical binary world of code. I was a freelance graphic designer, a creature of color palettes and abstract concepts. For years, we'd complemented each other. He was my anchor. I was his kite. But slowly, the tether had frayed. The conversations grew shorter, the silences longer. We'd sit across from each other at the Walrus and the Carpenter and Ballard, surrounded by the lively chatter of other couples, and have nothing to say. The decision to separate was like agreeing on a forecast of endless rain. It was sad, inevitable, and strangely peaceful. We signed the papers in a sterile office in downtown Seattle, shook hands, and promised to remain friends. And for a while, we did. My cousin Kevin had always occupied a strange space in our family. He was Aunt Carol's golden boy, the finance bro who worked at a prestigious firm in Bellevue and never missed a holiday. He was handsome in a generic, forgettable way, with perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. To the older generation of aunts and uncles, he was the model of success. To me, he'd always been a shadow, a presence that felt faintly unnerving. He had this way of giving compliments that felt like assessments, of sharing stories where he was always the hero and someone else, subtly, was the fool. When Mark and I announced our separation, Kevin was the first one to call me. "Chloe, I am so sorry," he'd said, his voice a masterclass in feigned concern. "If there's anything you need, anything at all, you let me know. Mark is like a brother to me, and you're my family. I'm here for both of you." I was naive enough to believe him. I thanked him, cried a little on the phone, and felt a flicker of warmth that my cousin was trying to bridge the coming divide. I was still raw, still navigating the lonely geography of my newly single apartment in Capitol Hill. The gesture felt kind. In reality, it was reconnaissance. He was gathering information, not to help, but to arm himself. The whispers started a few weeks later. A strange text from a second cousin in Oregon. "Hey, hope you're doing okay. Don't worry about the money stuff, you'll land on your feet." I stared at the message, completely bewildered. Money stuff? Mark and I had split our assets cleanly down the middle. There were no debts, no financial drama. I dismissed it as a weird misunderstanding. Then, a week later, I ran into a mutual friend of Mark's and mine at the QFC on Broadway. She was friendly, but there was a distinct coolness in her eyes, a kind of pitying judgment that hadn't been there before. "I heard about what happened," she said, clutching her basket of organic kale. "It's just awful. I never took you for someone who would hide things like that." I felt a prickle of unease. Hide things? What are you talking about? She just gave me a sad little smile and said she had to run. I stood in the middle of the produce aisle, my heart starting to pound. A narrative about me was being written, and I had no idea who the author was. The calls and texts with Mark became strained. He was distant, his answers clipped. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd just say he was busy with a project launch. I knew it was more than that. The easy friendship we had promised each other was curdling. The author, of course, was Kevin. He was performing a masterstroke of social manipulation, positioning himself as the neutral, compassionate confidant to both sides. He'd call me to get my side of the story, listening with that same practiced sympathy. "That must be so hard for you," he'd murmur. Then he would call Mark, twisting my words, adding his own venomous embellishments. He was a poison dart frog, brightly colored and seemingly harmless, secreting toxins all the while. He told Mark I'd been complaining to the family about his emotional unavailability, painting me as a bitter shrew. He told my family I'd been reckless with our joint finances, a lie that was particularly insidious because it was so plausible in a city as expensive as Seattle. He was playing chess with my life, and I didn't even know I was on the board. The concrete proof, the thing that finally ripped the blindfold from my eyes, arrived via a screenshot from my younger sister, Maya. Maya was the only one in the family who shared my skepticism of Kevin. She saw through his polished veneer to the empty ambition beneath. She had been added to a private family Facebook group, one of those digital prisons where distant relatives share baby pictures and political memes. She sent me the screenshot without a word of commentary. It was all that was needed. It was a post from Kevin, written 2 nights prior. It was long, sanctimonious, and filled with the most breathtaking lies. "Hey everyone," it began, accompanied by a smiling picture of him and Mark at a Mariners game from years ago. I know there's been a lot of questions about Mark and Chloe, and as I've been trying to support them both through this, I feel it's important to clear the air for the sake of the family. The truth is, this has been coming for a long time. Mark has been dealing with a lot of emotional instability from Chloe, not to mention the discovery of some significant hidden debts she ran up. He's a saint for putting up with it for as long as he did. Please keep him in your prayers as he heals from this difficult chapter, and please refrain from gossiping. This is a private matter, and he needs our love and support. I read it 3 times, each word a physical blow. Emotional instability, hidden debts, a saint for putting up with it. He had painted me as an unhinged, fiscally irresponsible villain, and Mark as my long-suffering victim. And the final line, "Please refrain from gossiping," was the most brilliant, evil part. It was a command disguised as a plea, a way of sanctifying his gossip as official, verified truth. The comments below the post were a chorus of support for him and Mark. "Oh, Kevin, you're such a good man for looking out for him." "Aunt Carol, that's just terrible." I knew something was off with her. "Great Uncle Gene, sending love and light to Mark. He deserves so much better." A cousin I hadn't seen in a decade. I felt the blood drain from my face. He hadn't just spread a rumor. He had published a verdict. He had tried and convicted me in the court of family opinion without me even being present to offer a defense. The fog of confusion cleared, replaced by the cold, hard clarity of betrayal. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, calculated attack. I thought back to every interaction, every sympathetic phone call, every concerned text. It was all a lie. He had been using my pain as a weapon against me from the very beginning. My divorce was just the opportunity he had been waiting for to finally, definitively, put me in my place and elevate his own status as the family's righteous savior. And it was working. The full weight of Kevin's power became suffocatingly clear in the weeks that followed. His carefully constructed narrative had set like concrete. I was no longer just Chloe, the niece, the cousin, the graphic designer. I was poor Chloe, the one who'd lost her mind and her husband. I was a cautionary tale whispered over pot roast and ambrosia salad. When I tried to fight back, to tell the truth, I was met with a wall of patronizing disbelief. It was like shouting into a soundproof room. My words just bounced back at me, unheard. I called my Aunt Carol, Kevin's mother, hoping that a direct appeal to reason might work. It was a foolish hope. "Carol," I started, my voice trembling slightly, "what Kevin posted on Facebook? It's not true, none of it. Mark and I didn't have financial problems. I don't have secret credit cards." Her response was a sigh, heavy with the weary patience of someone dealing with a difficult child. "Chloe, darling," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "denial is a part of grief. Kevin is just trying to protect his cousin. He loves Mark. He's worried sick. You shouldn't be angry at him for telling the truth. You should be looking at your own behavior." My behavior? I was stunned. "He fabricated a story that makes me sound like a monster." "Well, you have been under a lot of stress," she continued, completely ignoring my point. "People do strange things. The best thing you can do now is just be quiet and let this blow over. Don't make any more drama for the family. Don't make drama." That was their code. It meant, accept the lie, swallow your pain, and don't you dare disrupt the comfortable fiction we've all agreed to believe. Hanging up the phone, I felt a profound sense of isolation, the kind that feels like being adrift in a cold, black ocean. My own family was telling me that my truth was an inconvenience. Kevin wasn't just a liar. He was the gatekeeper of the family's reality, and he had locked me out. The most painful cut came from Mark. Our communication, already strained, ceased almost entirely. When I finally got him on the phone, his voice was cold, distant. "Mark, you have to know what Kevin is saying isn't true," I pleaded. "We were there. We know why we separated." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Look, Chloe," he said finally, and the exhaustion in his voice was crushing. "Kevin's been a really good friend to me through all of this. He's just been trying to help. Maybe you don't remember things clearly. You were pretty unhappy at the end. And there it was. Kevin's poison had worked. He had planted seeds of doubt in Mark's own memory of our marriage. By constantly repeating the lies, by framing them with concern and sympathy, he had made Mark question our shared history. He had taken our quiet, mutual sadness and reframed it as my personal failing. I was no longer his partner in an amicable split. I was the unstable ex-wife he had thankfully escaped. Kevin had successfully alienated me from the one person on earth who knew the actual truth. Now it was my word against the Golden Boys, and his word was gold. The feeling of powerlessness was absolute. Kevin was untouchable. He moved through family gatherings with an easy, confident charm, accepting praise for his loyalty to Mark. He'd look at me from across the room with a flicker of triumph in his eyes, a tiny, knowing smirk that was visible only to me. He was basking in the glow of my character assassination. He had made himself the hero of my tragedy. My family saw a devoted cousin. I saw a sociopath in a cashmere sweater. At the disastrous birthday dinner for my father, when Aunt Carol dropped that bomb about my spending habits, I saw the full picture. It wasn't just online gossip anymore. It had metastasized into the real world, into the very heart of my family. I excused myself from the table, my hands shaking, and went to the guest bathroom. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, at the pale, haunted face looking back at me. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching wound. But beneath it, something else was stirring. A low, quiet hum of anger. It was the cold fury of the deeply wronged. In that moment, the years of trying to be the nice girl, the quiet niece, the accommodating people-pleaser, they all just burned away. I had been pleading for them to believe my truth. I realize now that was the wrong approach. You can't reason with people who have chosen to believe a lie. You can't ask for your power back from those who enjoy seeing you without it. You have to take it, and you have to do it in a way they will never forget. I looked at the woman in the mirror, tears of rage and resolve welling in her eyes. The victim was gone. The war had just begun. My resolve solidified in the quiet solitude of my apartment, with the Seattle rain streaking down the windows like gray tears. The humiliation had burned off, leaving behind a core of cold, hard steel. I was done being sad. I was done being helpless. I was going to dismantle Kevin's life with the same meticulous precision he had used to dismantle mine. But I wouldn't use whispers and lies. I would use the one thing he couldn't defend against, the truth. His truth. I was a digital artist. My entire career was built on pixels and data, on understanding how information flows and how it is perceived. I knew my way around the dark corners of the internet far better than a finance bro ever could. My war would be fought on my turf. So I started digging. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, put on a dark ambient playlist, and opened my laptop. My first stop was his social media. I went through his entire digital history: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, even his old forgotten MySpace page. I was looking for cracks in the facade, for the real Kevin beneath the curated perfection. His profiles were a monument to his own ego. Photos of him on a sailboat on Lake Union, humble bragging about closing a big deal, posing with his parents, a smarmy caption about how family is everything. It was sickeningly perfect. But I knew that no one is that perfect. I remembered a story he'd told at a Christmas party years ago, a story he'd laughed off as a youthful indiscretion. It was about a wild spring break with his college buddies in Arizona. He'd been vague on the details, just mentioning something about it being a crazy weekend in Scottsdale. It was a tiny thread, almost nothing, but it was all I had. My search began. I focused on Maricopa County Public Records. I spent hours, entire nights, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of purpose, combing through online databases. I searched for his name, variations of his name, his date of birth. The county's online portal was clunky and slow, a bureaucratic nightmare. I hit dead end after dead end. For 3 nights, I found nothing. The doubt started to creep in. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe he really was the perfect person everyone thought he was. On the 4th night, around 3 a.m., I was about to give up. My eyes were burning from staring at the screen. On a whim, I tried a slightly different search parameter. Instead of his full middle name, I used just his middle initial. I clicked search, not expecting anything. The page loaded. And there it was. Case number, CR 2015-XXXX. Defendant, Kevin R. Peterson. Charge, theft, shoplifting. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on the case file. My heart was hammering against my ribs. And then the page finished loading. At the top of the digital document was a photograph. A mugshot. It was him. Unmistakably him. But it was a version of him no one in our family had ever seen. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by a sullen, petulant glare. His perfect hair was disheveled. His eyes were glassy and unfocused. He looked cheap and common and guilty. The placard he was holding listed the date, March 14th, 2015. The same weekend he'd always claimed he was at a Young Leaders in Finance conference in Phoenix. According to the court documents, my cousin, the Golden Boy, had been arrested for trying to shoplift a $250 bottle of cologne and a pair of designer sunglasses from a Nordstrom at Scottsdale Fashion Square. He'd pleaded guilty to a lesser misdemeanor, paid a fine, and had the record expunged, or so he thought. Expunged from criminal background checks, maybe, but not from the deep memory of the internet if you knew where to look. I stared at the image, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across my face. This was it. This was the weapon. It was perfect. It wasn't a rumor I'd started. It wasn't a secret I'd twisted. It was a photograph. It was a court document. It was a cold, hard, undeniable fact. It was a picture of the real Kevin, stripped of his charm, his money, and his lies. It was a portrait of a common thief. Now I needed a stage. Just posting it randomly wouldn't have the right impact. It needed to be a performance, a public execution of his reputation, just as he had done to me. I checked my calendar. And there it was, circled in red, an event I had been dreading, Kevin's 30th birthday. His mother was throwing him a huge party at a swanky restaurant on Lake Bellevue. But more importantly, she had created a public Facebook event page for it, a digital shrine where friends and family were encouraged to post their birthday wishes and favorite memories of Kevin. The timing was perfect. The audience would be all the same people who had read his lies about me, the same people who had judged me and cast me out. They would all be gathered in one place, virtually and physically, to celebrate the man I knew was a fraud. I saved the high-resolution mugshot to my desktop. I saved the link to the court record. I had my weapon and I had my stage. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. The people-pleaser in me was long dead. In her place was an artist, and I was about to create my masterpiece. The day of Kevin's birthday arrived with a sense of electric anticipation. I woke up feeling a calm I hadn't felt in months. It was the calm of a sniper who has their target in their sights and is simply waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. I ignored the 17 missed calls from my mother and Aunt Carol, likely calling to either demand my presence at the party or to gloat about my exclusion from it. I made myself a pot of strong coffee from Cafe Vita, sat at my desk, and opened the Facebook event page for Kevin's Dirty 30 Birthday Bash. It was already a nauseating spectacle. The wall was a tidal wave of sycophantic praise, each post trying to outdo the last in its effusive adoration. Aunt Carol had posted a long, rambling tribute that began, "To my wonderful son, the most honest and loyal man I know." Uncle Robert posted a picture of them fishing. "Happy 30th to a nephew who sets the standard for integrity." His college friends posted old photos with captions like, "Couldn't ask for a better dude in my corner." Each post was a fresh log on the fire of my rage. Integrity, honesty, loyalty. They were using the very words he lacked to describe him. I let the page populate all day, allowing the saccharine tributes to pile up, creating the highest possible pedestal from which he could fall. I wanted the maximum number of people to be watching when I pushed him off. Evening came. The party in Bellevue would be in full swing. I knew that's when people would be checking their phones the most, scrolling through the event page between sips of champagne. The time was 8:15 p.m. showtime. I didn't post on the event wall itself. That was too clumsy. An admin could delete it. Instead, I crafted a post on my own Facebook timeline. It was a public post, the first one I'd made in months. This was key. It meant anyone could see it and anyone could share it. I began to type, my fingers steady. I kept the tone cool, calm, and devastatingly factual. "A very happy 30th birthday to my cousin, Kevin Peterson," I wrote. I then tagged him. And not just him. I tagged my mom, my dad, my sister Maya. I tagged Aunt Carol and Uncle Robert. I tagged every single aunt, uncle, and cousin who was on Facebook, about 35 people in total. I tagged a few of his finance bro friends who I knew were at the party with him. I wanted to make sure no one missed it. I wanted their phones to buzz in their pockets, right there at his birthday dinner. I continued writing. "Since you've been so open and concerned with sharing what you believe to be the truth about my life recently, I thought it was only fair to return the favor. Family shouldn't have secrets after all. A lot of you are celebrating his integrity tonight. So I wanted to share a memory from a weekend he has often referred to as his Young Leaders in Finance conference in Arizona. And then I uploaded the photo. The mugshot. It appeared in crystal clear, humiliating detail beneath my text. The sullen eyes. The messy hair. The placard reading, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Peterson Kevin R. Charge theft. I added one final line. It seems some people's definition of integrity is more flexible than others. Here's the public court record, in case anyone is interested in the facts. I pasted the direct link to the county clerk's website. Then I took a deep breath, and I clicked post. For a full minute, there was silence. Then, my world exploded. My phone, sitting on the desk beside me, began to vibrate so violently it sounded like a trapped hornet. Notifications flooded my screen. Likes, shares, comments. The first comment was from my sister Maya, a single perfect devil emoji. Then came the shocked face emojis from my more distant cousins, and then a comment from Kevin. His name popped up, a notification I'd been waiting for. "This is insane, Chloe," he wrote. "You're making this up." "This is a photoshopped fake. You're completely unhinged." I smiled. This was the part of the plan that the title of my story is all about. I hovered over his comment, and I clicked delete. His words vanished into the digital ether. A minute later, another comment from him, more frantic this time. "My lawyer will be in touch." "You're sick! Get help!" Delete, Aunt Carol chimed in. "This is slander. Chloe, you have always been a jealous, spiteful girl. Take this down immediately." Delete, his friends started piling on. "Chloe, this is low. What is wrong with you? Get a life. Delete, delete, delete." It was a beautiful, empowering rhythm. They could scream all they wanted, but on my post, on my wall, I was God. I controlled the narrative now. Their outrage, their attacks, their defenses, they simply ceased to exist. All that remained was my calm, factual post, the damning photograph, and a growing chorus of stunned silence from the rest of the family. My phone started ringing. Aunt Carol, I let it go to voicemail. My mother, I let it go to voicemail. An unknown number from Bellevue. I silenced my phone completely. I wasn't going to talk to them. I was going to let the picture do the talking. The most satisfying notification came about 20 minutes in. A text message from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew who it was. It was Mark. "Chloe, I just saw your post. I had no idea. I am so sorry for everything." I read the text and I felt not vindication, but a quiet, sad relief. He finally knew. They all finally knew. The foundation of lies Kevin had built his entire identity on had just been hit by a wrecking ball. The chaos I had unleashed in that restaurant in Bellevue must have been biblical. I pictured Kevin, his face pale, frantically trying to type comments that kept disappearing. I pictured Aunt Carol, her face a mask of fury, trying to call me. I pictured the other family members, their phones passed around the table, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. The golden boy wasn't gold. He was just a cheap, common thief. And now, everyone knew it. The aftermath was a quiet earthquake, with tremors that lasted for weeks. The family didn't just crack. It split along a fault line I had exposed. Kevin deactivated all of his social media within 24 hours. The grand birthday event page was quietly deleted, but not before my post had been screenshotted and shared hundreds of times. The story was out, and it could not be put back in its box. Aunt Carol and her side of the family completely cut me off, which felt less like a punishment and more like a reward. They circled their wagons around their tarnished golden boy, choosing to believe a new narrative, that I was a cruel, vindictive monster who had maliciously dredged up a minor youthful mistake to ruin his life. They were a lost cause, content to live in their carefully constructed delusion. But the rest of the family was a different story. My father called me the next morning. He didn't yell or scold. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "I can't say I approve of how you did it, Chloe, but I understand why you did. He gave you no other choice." It was the closest he'd ever come to saying he was proud of me for fighting back. My mother, after a week of strained silence, finally called and apologized for not believing me. One by one, the cousins and uncles who had been so quick to judge me sent tentative, awkward messages, trying to bridge the gap. They knew I had been telling the truth, and they were ashamed. The silence from Kevin was absolute. I heard through Maya that he'd told his parents he was thinking of transferring to his firm's office in Portland, wanting a fresh start. He couldn't face the wreckage of his reputation. He had built his power on the currency of perception, and I had bankrupted him with a single JPEG. A month after what the family now referred to as the post, I was sitting in my favorite spot, a window seat at Elliott Bay Book Company on Capitol Hill, sketching in my notebook. The constant anxiety that had been my companion for a year was gone, replaced by a sense of calm, quiet strength. I felt like myself again, not the broken, humiliated version, but an older, wiser, and much, much stronger one. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I knew instantly who it was. "You think you've won, don't you?" The message read. "You ruined my life. You destroyed our family, all over a few stupid lies. I hope you're happy, Chloe. I hope you're miserable and alone forever." It was the pathetic, whining rant of a dethroned king. There was no apology, no remorse, only blame. A year ago, a message like that would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. Now I felt nothing but a distant clinical pity. I didn't reply. I simply blocked the number. I turned back to my sketchbook, to the clean white page waiting for me. Outside, the Seattle sky was its signature shade of soft, pearly gray. I took a sip of my latte, the warmth spreading through me. He thought he had destroyed our family with his lies. He was wrong. He had only revealed what it was truly made of. They say blood is thicker than water, but they never tell you how easily it stains. The end.